Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of What's That? I'm still your host, Seth Benoit, and in this episode I'll be learning about Legion Field. Legion Field is a municipal field near Town Hall. It has a big soccer field and a couple tennis courts. I know it was renovated at one point in time. Some questions I have going into this. Where does the name Legion Field come from? How much use does the field get? The renovation process, what it looked like before compared to what it looks like now. It's a beautiful looking area. And I'm hoping I can reach out to some people who may have been directly involved in the renovation, or even people who are responsible for the upkeep and management of it. So let's get right into it. Legion Field was purchased in 1925 but opened in 1930. The property purchased contained 13 acres of swampland. This proved to be a tremendous issue for planning and use of the field. Architect Ernst Ehrman designed the park, and the American Legion donated $8,000 to assist with its construction. It originally housed 2 football fields, 2 baseball diamonds, 7 tennis courts, 2 concrete grandstands, and a quarter-mile track. It was given the name Legion Memorial Field shortly after World War I in dedication to the Weymouth soldiers who went to serve their country.
The 1956 Weymouth-Brockton Thanksgiving Day football game was probably the most one-sided in this rivalry, as Weymouth High just took it to Brockton, recovering a fumble on the opening kickoff and then turning it into a Victor Gravio short touchdown run. The jump on top 7-0 with 10:21 to go in the first quarter. By no means was Weymouth High done, as the defense was just too ferocious for Brockton. Don Jacobson sacking Kent Davidson. Then with 5:37 to go in the first period, Victor Gravio finds Charles Finlayson in the back of the end zone all by himself. 20 yards in all, 14-0 Weymouth High. Then Santo Pasqualucci scores his second of 2 touchdowns in the second quarter, as Weymouth High would increase the lead at this point to 27-6. And they go for the 2 by accident, as John Player gets a high snap and just does some dazzling footwork to find his way into the end zone. Look at him break the tackles as Weymouth High rolls on to a very easy 48-6 victory over Brockton.
The field played host to the Weymouth High School football team in addition to the Boston Patriots in the early 1960s. High school graduates would walk across the field to receive their diplomas here. It was said that the games on the field could draw crowds of up to 20,000 people. That's crazy to imagine. In 2004, Legion Field fell into a state of disrepair and was closed. Grass grew, flowers bloomed, bleachers rusted. The once great field was forgotten. There were different plans discussed with the community, but there never seemed to be a clear consensus. In 2007, there was a proposed sports complex to fill the area but failed the town council vote. Coming back around in 2014, the town council passed a vote to borrow $6 million for the renovation of Legion Field. With this plan, they were able to build out 5 tennis courts, a walking path around the field, a larger parking lot, and a children's playground. Drainage was also changed to alleviate the swampiness of the previous field, with the added benefit of creating a small pond along the walking path. And in 2015, Legion Field completed its rehabilitation and was once again open to the public. So I was able to find out a ton of information on Legion Field. It's well documented on the town website, numerous articles I was able to find, and I once again reached out to Debbie Sullivan, who was kind enough and helpful enough to send me some pictures and a whole background history of the field as well. So I think the next step is to reach out to a few people who we might find relevant for some extra information and insight. So I have emails out to Steve Riley, who is the Director of the Parks and Recreation Department for the town of Weymouth, George Ponce, who's the Director of Veteran Services for the town of Weymouth, and Jim Clark, who's the Chair of the Weymouth Historical Commission. So now let's just wait and see who responds. And while we wait, let's check back in with sports.
The 1965 Weymouth-Brockton Thanksgiving Day game is going to be remembered for 2 reasons. First, the wild finish, and second, the play of quarterback George Anderson, who would lead Weymouth to the victory and also lead that wild finish. As in the first half, he would score on this short touchdown run and then boot the point after to give Weymouth High a 7-0 lead that would carry until the 4th quarter. But Anderson's luck went south for just a moment. He would have a punt block that would lead to a Brockton touchdown and 2-point conversion and put the Boxers on top 8-7. But late game heroics by Anderson, as Anderson would lead Weymouth High to a game-winning field goal. A dog came on the field in the play prior that enabled Weymouth High just to have a little bit of time, and Anderson booting the game-winning field goal with 1 second left. Weymouth 10, Brockton 8.
Let's meet with George Ponce, the Director of Veteran Services, to get some more information on the American Legion and their contribution to Legion Memorial Field. Here we are with George Ponce, the Director of Veteran Services for the town of Weymouth. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, George.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I've been doing a deep dive into Legion here. I've been getting a lot of the history, but there's one piece that I'd like a bit more information on. That's sort of the memorial aspect of it. So I was wondering if you could fill me in on some of the details I might have been missing.
Sure, happy to try. This field was the idea of the Women's Auxiliary of American Legion being, well, it's American Legion Post 79, as the plaque says. Now it's known as the American Legion Bean Post, but at the time it was just Post 79. And after World War I, the Ladies Auxiliary recognized that there were no World War I memorials, and they thought what better tribute could be than to have a living part of the community. It was in recognition and memory of the 700 plus Weymouth veterans that had served in World War I, and then also for the 23 that never made it back home. And the American Legion was only formed several years before that. It was formed in 1919. So this being just after World War I, it was really in its infancy stages. They were learning how they could contribute to the community, and remember and the sacrifice that so many had made on behalf of the Great War, as it was referred to back then, because there was no World War I, World War II at the time.
Right. And at the risk of sounding a little silly, what exactly is the American Legion?
The American Legion is a voluntary group of veterans that have served during a wartime. That is the eligibility criteria. You don't necessarily have to be in combat, but you have to have served during a conflict period. It was established, it was kind of following in the footsteps of the GAR halls, the Grand Army of the Republic halls, but this one was focused on actually establishing care and follow-up for the veterans, many of whom, you know, suffered casualties, were wounded. They couldn't go back to their previous employment, and it was creating an awareness of the country for the sacrifice that both the veterans and their families had made. The American Legion includes the Legionnaires, which are the actual veterans, the Ladies Women's Auxiliary, which are the mothers, sisters, daughters, wives of the veteran that served, and then they actually have another department called the Sons of the American Legion.
Oh, okay. And something you actually mentioned before we started filming here is that the field here actually existed before Town Hall did, which I think is really interesting because I figured Town Hall would have been maybe the first thing built in town, but clearly it wasn't.
Well, there was another town hall at the time.
Oh, there was?
Yes. So before the existing town hall was
okay.
built, Legion Field was established, Legion Memorial Field was established. That was before the Veterans Memorial Wall, which is at the Ralph Talbot Amphitheater right next to Town Hall as well. All in this general area. You know, I somewhat a little student of history, and it just amazes me the effort that the women took it upon themselves to raise $7,000 back in the 1920s, you know, for the purchase of this land. That just shows an incredible amount of effort and, you know, willingness, the need. They wanted to satisfy the need to remember, you know, their loved ones that had sacrificed during the Great War.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a great thing they did, a great cause, and I love that it turned out to be, you know, a big, beautiful, renovated field now.
Oh yeah.
So
when I first started here 11 years ago, it did not look anything like this. It was a scraggly, overgrown field that, you know, it looked like a perfect haven for pheasant and, you know, and wild birds. But you didn't see many kids playing on the field. So quite a change today.
So you must have, you know, I don't know, a sense of pride that you did see it at such a low point, and now it's really just a great sort of meeting spot and area for everyone to play and have fun.
A tremendous sense of pride, and I think if the Women's Auxiliary that helped found this were to see what's going on today, you know, they would be happily amazed that it's such a central point, both for the town of Weymouth, but also for the entire South Shore. People come from all over to come here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was their idea back when this was just a marsh, as you had pointed out earlier. They must have had, you know, a vision down the road. It's like, we need a place, you know, for our young people to play, and this would be a good spot for it.
Yeah, a great place to honor them, and $7,000 well spent. All right, thank you so much for meeting with me today. And
thank you for having me.
Now let's meet with Jim Clark, the chair of the Weymouth Historical Commission, to see if we can get some more information on the renovation process itself. Here we are with Jim Clark, the chair of the Weymouth Historical Commission. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, Jim.
Sure.
How long have you been with the Historical Commission, and what would you say your mission is there?
Okay. Well, I've been with the commission about 4 years now. I was formerly the planning director for the town of Weymouth. And the Historical Commission is different from the society. The society is a private organization. We're a town organization. And our job is to oversee and protect the heritage of the community, promote it, educate people about the town's history, things like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a very noble cause. And obviously today we're here at Legion Field, so I was wondering if you could share a little bit of the history of Legion Field here.
Sure. So Legion is a name for the American Legion, the Ladies Auxiliary of the American Legion back after World War I put money forward to put together the memorial wall and help with the construction of the field. So that occurred in the 20s. It went over time, and around 1930, the field began to be used mostly by the school department. We had a big football field here with stands. They had a cinder track. They had a baseball field, little league field, the tennis courts, obviously, but it was pretty fully used. And there were many great football games here under Coach Harry Allinson, and the Weymouth teams did quite well. So
Yeah,
it's well known for.
I interviewed Mark Ducharme, who's been covering Weymouth sports here for decades, and he let me know that this was really just a big, sports hub for the community, and just lots of Weymouth pride here.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened in the late 90s and the early 2000s is the schools transitioned their athletic activities down to the high school in South Weymouth and off of here. So the schools then turned the property, the field, back over to the town. And then we needed a lot of work, and we're trying to decide what to do. One of the issues with Legion Field, and you can see when you've taken pictures or you walk around, we have a fair amount of wetlands. There's a lot of peat underneath the ground here. And as from the 30s, when the field was first used, they had to continually fill in spots where the ground was subsiding. So it was a kind of critical issue to deal with it.
Yeah.
In fact, the baseball field the outfield used to be over towards the corner of at Middle Street, where there's now the main wetlands. So in the 2000s, one of the things Mayor Madden did in preparation to trying to come up with a reuse plan, we figured we had to do something with the peat. And what we did was a process called preloading, where you put extra material on the ground where the peat is, and then that compresses the peat. And once it's done, you can move the material off, and the peat doesn't kind of rebound in the same way. And we actually tied it in with the restoration of the Greenbush line, and we used a lot of the material coming out of the Hingham Tunnel, and it was here for about 18 to 24 months, and it was used to compress the peat.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't very pretty to look at, but it really had to be done in order to move forward with a plan.
Obviously, the field was renovated and looks absolutely beautiful now. What role did you take in the process of restoring the field?
Sure. So, working with the mayor's office, the Planning and Community Development Office oversaw a lot of the development. And I think a key point in this is that after the preloading was done, Mayor Madden had a plan for a more active use of this whole property, and that didn't go over well with the abutters and others. So he drew back, began to rethink it, and we actually had a grad student, Matt Soul, who lived in the neighborhood. His family lived in the neighborhood. He came to the planning office and said, I have some thoughts about how the property should be reused, kind of incorporating more natural elements into and kind of reducing the active use of some of the areas. And he drew up some sketch plans. We showed them to Mayor Kay at the time. She was enthused, and we decided to move forward and see how that went over with neighbors. We got some success. People were happier with that. It was not as an intensive use. And we were starting to propose the turf field, the artificial field, so that we could get more use on the smaller area. So that was how those plans kindly evolved over the late 2000s in through 2010. And the first thing we did after the preloading is we redid the memorial wall. So that was a separate project. It was done in about 2010, 2011. We actually had an incident where somebody was driving over King Oak Hill and didn't make either one of the turns, either onto Commercial or Middle, and went right through the wall and landed in the wetlands.
Oh, jeez.
Fortunately, it hasn't happened again. We have had the wall restored. We had a group called Activitas do the plans for the development, and then in 2013 and 14 we prepared the plans, went out to bid, and put it under construction. So if you look around here, you'll see that with the turf field, it has multi-use there. We restored the tennis courts. We have a walking path and other pathways, and the walking path has mile marker every 1/10 of a mile, so people know what they're doing. But you'll see a lot of natural elements in here, and you'll see some mounding and other things to kind of separate it. So when you are in different areas of Legion, it feels much bigger because you kind of get hidden as you walk around. So that's kind of the quick history of what went on.
That's great. And it being an old historic, once again, sports hub for even surrounding towns and everything, falling into a bit of disrepair and then coming back and being renovated sort of better than ever is a great success story for it.
And it's a way you incorporate, the historic elements into something new as well.
You're honoring the past.
And in fact, I just went by it coming over here, is the Harry Allinson stone, which had been taken when the schools left, but then it was it's back here, and it's at the entranceway to the park, and was rededicated for him.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
So my last question to you would be, what does Legion Field mean to you?
To me, it kind of, I'm a sports person as well, so it does. I didn't grow up in town, but it resonates. It has a great history. It also ties in with the veterans, and Weymouth is unique in how they honor the veterans of this community. When you talk about the Ralph Talbot Amphitheater, Memorial Wall, this property, there are over a dozen properties throughout the town that honor various aspects of people that were involved in military affairs over the hundreds of years that the town was here.
Jim, thank you again for coming out on such a hot day and filling me in on a lot of the information I couldn't quite get before. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks. I enjoyed it.
So I don't claim to be a very smart man, but something just occurred to me, and I didn't realize we have another person, another resource that I can sit down with and get a lot of good information from. He's been covering Weymouth sports for I don't even know how many years now, but let's sit down with Weymouth's own Mark Ducharme, Weymouth sports videographer extraordinaire. How long you been covering Weymouth sports, Mark?
Too long. No, seriously, it is way too long. 40 plus years.
Wow.
I'll put it that way, 40 plus.
That's incredible. So obviously you've covered sports at the old Legion Field.
Yes, I did. It was one of the more entertaining places, and if you went to Weymouth North, you also had to run the track. You had to go down there for gym. So I've been through it all.
What would you say is a highlight of the old Legion Field? Were there any particular games or?
Good grief, there were plenty of them. I mean, that 91 Thanksgiving Day game, there have been a number of the football and soccer games. I mean, there's one that people don't remember. It's the North-South lacrosse game under the lights. You had a Boston station come down and film the highlights, and they had about 1,500 people there. So it's been incredible. It's something special.
No, I mean, I've been going into the whole history of it, and it was really just a giant sports hub for the community here. Even the old Boston Patriots would play here, I was reading, which is pretty incredible. You know, I've always thought of Weymouth as kind of a smaller community, but, you know, that area, that field alone really just resonated out.
It was, people don't realize, and I learned it from Ben Ells, who used to do the stats and everything else for Weymouth football, that it's the middle school, that the players used to march down the street and down the Legion Field that way. And there was some, they would come that way. Now, later on, I think it was like the Harry Arlenson era, they'd come from the high school and walk up, and it used to be something special that they walk up to the school, up the street. They would be, oh, come on, go get them, go do this. They were, it was something special. It was a happening.
And you remember when it got shut down? What were your thoughts when it just kind of...
Living in the Weymouth area, you'd drive by, and holy cow, it was like, man, it's like, it's down, it's not being used, it's, wow. It just seemed strange not to see events there. Granted, the high school field is fine, but you go by there, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I can remember this, I can remember that. It's like, all the thoughts come rushing back, games, events, everything. And I can remember I covered graduations there. Some of those were, could be 95 degrees out, and in all the old days in the cable, you're covering the graduation, you're top of the booth at Legion Field. That was a lot of fun.
But I would assume you'd probably prefer the new revamped Legion at this point.
Sergeant Mullen is fine. And as far as Legion now, I wish there were more stands. I wish for people there were more stands and an opportunity for the kids, to celebrate it more. I mean, it's fun to watch you go into do a game, like a rugby game or something, and you see all the little kids having fun on the slides and so forth. That's great, but they're missing something. It's something missing. And the field is, it was a special place for not just for as athletics, as I'll put it, as I said, graduations, a lot of things they tried to run there. I remember somebody tried to do some concerts there.
I mean, that would have been a great place for it, back when it was just kind of open.
Yeah.
I don't really think it would work nowadays,
No.
but...
No. But there's so many things. I mean, everybody reminds me that '91 football game was like, oh, that was unbelievable. It was fun. It was incredible. I mean, I can always remember Tony Manzelli's up top. He was doing the upstairs coaching for Weymouth. And Tony walks over to me, and I'll clean it up a heck of a lot with Tony. As he looks at me, he says, our little kids are beating out of the big kids from Brockton. And I'm laughing. I'm going like, Tony, you can't say that. He's going like, they are. They are. And I was always laughing about that. And I knew the Brockton announcers from the radio, and they were after the game. They said, this is one of the best games going. And people were listening on the radio at the Brockton station going like, and they were rooting for Weymouth because it's big bad Brockton. They were rooting for Weymouth. And it was so, I had people coming up to me and telling me these things about it. And that field, people, 18,000, that's insane.
Yeah, I still can't believe it. And you gave me the tapes, and that's just incredible to me.
Oh gosh, I mean, I can remember we were in studio, the old studio, and Bob West was asked about the Thanksgiving Day game, and Bob West turns around and says, "Oh yeah, we've already sold 10,000 tickets," and that's like 10 days prior to the game. 10,000 sold. I had coaches telling me and said people are driving up in their own mini limo, driving up in parking. They had tailgate parties. I wish I could have gone. I was up there, but it was unbelievable. It was fun.
Yeah, so it was just really a big sense of community and pride and excitement.
Both sides. As I said, north-south lacrosse was like, it told you how far lacrosse had come in the town of Weymouth, because every time you turned around, there were people all over the stands, and they were having fun. It was like a 75-degree night, and everybody was like, "This is great," they were fun. And then they got to go home, and they're watching the highlights again on whatever, I can't remember the Boston station. They were watching the highlights, and they were like, "This," and I can't remember. All the guys said, who was the commentator, said, "It's a happening in Weymouth." And that's what a lot of things did, was as far as Legion Field goes. And that's what you want to still see with the stuff, with the kids. It's a happening for them.
That's awesome. It's really a place for everyone. Yeah. And I think you've said it all. Yeah. And thank you so much for
no problem
sitting down and sharing some memories about the old days.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Now that we got some insight on sports on the old Legion Field, let's talk about sports on the new Legion Field. Here we are with the Director of Parks and Recreation, Steve Riley. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, Steve. We've gone into the history of Legion Field here, but I was hoping we could talk about the more modern day usage of it and, you know, the success of it since its renovation.
Sure. So like I said, I'm Steve Riley, the Director of the Parks and Rec Department, and been in this job for nearly 10 years now, which, you know, doesn't seem like I've been at it that long, but Legion Field itself was something that came online. Yeah, we're actually coming up on 10 years for Legion Field as well. I believe it was June 20th of 2015 was when we reopened the new Legion Field. Obviously, Legion Field has been here for a very, very long time, and it has a great sports history. You know, it was used primarily as it was the main field athletic complex for the high school for decades. It had fallen into disrepair and definitely needed a major overhaul, which, like I said, was done just before I got started. Through my involvement with some of the sports programs and such, I ended up, fortunately, getting the position that I'm in now. And one of the immediate things I had to jump on was kind of management and oversight of this facility. No small task in that, you know, prior to this, we only had one turf field in town, and we had lots and lots of fields that were really in disrepair. So this was like a big, big moment for the community to have a field or a park like this. But we kind of knew early on that it was going to be incredibly active and under a lot of demand from all the different sports programs. You know, Weymouth has a very vibrant sports community, lots of great programs between lacrosse, soccer, football. Everybody that you would expect to play on a field like this all wanted a piece of it. So shortly thereafter was when the Headland administration came in and we looked at some of our other complexes. But immediately the impact of Legion Field on the community was tremendous. It was, you know, it right away became very much as much as of a sports complex, but also just a great social spot in the town, just really a place for families to gather. I think, you know, right now in the middle of the day on a Wednesday, you know, there's a dad with his kids out knocking a ball around, right?
Yeah, no,
which is some of the coolest use that we have out here, right? You know, sometimes if there's not games going on a Friday night, you'll see dozens of families just off in their little piece of the park, knocking the ball around, throwing a frisbee, or doing just, you know, doing what people are supposed to do in a park. Playground is, you know, we have a fantastic playground over there, and see moms and dads over there with their children daily when the weather's like this. So it really became a very much a focal point for the community, tennis courts and all of that. So it was amazing and a great impetus for us to move forward with a lot of the other park improvements that we've done around the town. But this was kind of the starting point. I think one of the other things that, you know, it's funny in that it's 10 years. It's like, you know, I think a lot of people like behave and act like it's always been a part of the community, and it really wasn't. It was terrible for quite a while, right? We had, you know, wetlands established in the middle of it when it was overgrown. It was just crazy, and it was total eyesore and stuff. But now everyone's just like used to it. It's like wow, this is like, it's this gem that we didn't always have. And sometimes, yeah, you know, even like our school programs. The middle school, Chapman, you know, the new Chapman Middle School, or even the Adams School, before it was changing usage, you know, a lot of their classes, gym class and other classes, everybody, they need a break from the classroom, they come down here and just bring the, you know, it's an amenity for the schools as well. And something else like high school athletics, right? So because we had this additional field, we were able to bring in new programs that Weymouth never really had before. So we now have a very successful rugby program, which we didn't have before because we really didn't have field space for it. We have girls field hockey. We never had field hockey programs in the town before too. So it just created, having this field and our other fields, it's just created a whole new vibe, whole new opportunities. It's been a huge revelation for the town.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Especially, it's a historic site too. It has a lot of historical significance, and when it went into disrepair is a little bit of a bummer. But the fact that it's really just this gorgeous place now, and it really does seem like it gets a ton of use, and that's just wonderful.
It really does. It's funny, and even simple stuff. We have walking paths that kind of meander throughout the whole space, and like the walking paths, like I get emails. Hey, can we set a lighting schedule for 5 o'clock in the morning so the path lights are on, and up till like 11 o'clock at night because people working different shifts or whatever want to get out and get their exercise. So the walking path is in use constantly. It amazes me. It's a third of a mile, by the way, on the inside track, and a half a mile if you go all the way to the outer perimeters. That's a question that we get all the time. There are little markers on the ground, but if you're reading your phone, you probably don't notice the markers, but it is marked out. But yeah, the walking paths get used all the time. And like I said, playground, the tennis courts are always in use. I do find that they're actually the tennis courts are a bit of the envy of the South Shore, and I know that we get a lot of people from other communities coming to use these courts because they're that nice. And sometimes you walk around here, and like I said, given the state of disrepair that this was in for the longest time, it's still kind of walk around here in a little bit of amazement that we have something like this in the town of Weymouth, right? Because it was not always like this. So it's really been something special.
Yeah, honestly, you covered every question that I was going to ask you.
I've had 3 cups of coffee today,
okay, great.
So that's not surprising that I banged through it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for meeting with me, and yeah.
Hey, my pleasure, anytime. I'll see you at another field. We'll talk about that one too. I'll try not to be so caffeinated.
No, please. It makes everything easier for me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Legion Memorial Field has a deep and rich connection with Weymouth. It serves as a living memorial to the soldiers who went to fight in the Great War. Thousands of people from neighboring communities would cheer for their hometown football team there. And when it fell into disuse, the town came together with a plan to restore it to its former glory, where it's now a community favorite park. I'd like to thank everyone who helped me put together this episode. Debbie Sullivan, thank you for sending some information in to me. Jim Clark, Mark Ducharme, Steve Riley, George Ponce, thank you again so much for interviewing with me and sharing some stories about past and current Legion Field. And all I have to say is, that's what's that. If anyone out there has any people, places, or things they'd like me to do a deep dive on and to figure out what it is, we post these to Facebook. So if you want to post down the comments, we do read them, and we'll see if there's anything interesting you want me to cover.